Hello, I'm Jesse Solberg, and today we're talking about the historiography of disability language in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So, when we talk about disability as a subject of historical interest, it really dates to the Elizabethan era. William Shakespeare placed the historical fact of King Richard III's physical deformity, he had severe scoliosis and a hunched back, in a social context when within the play he made that deformity an outward expression of Richard III's inner evil. Now, Shakespeare's work appears to have been derived from fact, but it is overall historical fiction. Disability history as an academic discipline doesn't really begin until the 1980s with Paul K. Longmore, who writes two book reviews for the scholarly journal Reviews in American History. And these book reviews are covering several books that are written about disabled individuals and disabled groups, the deaf, the mentally disabled, and a couple specific people, FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and Randolph Bourne, two people who were disabled but still had successful careers. But they don't really center the disability in the way that Longmore feels it should be. He feels that disability is a social construct, not a medical model. The medical model meaning that the the disability that we have is something that we are born with or that we acquire that remains permanent and is an essential part of our characteristics as a person rather than a result of our interactions with society around us. And he says, well, disability is all about not being able to function in society. So therefore, disability is created by society. And he's really the first author to do this. Later authors would pick up on his challenge to produce more narratives about disability. And one of the most popular of these is Douglas C. Bainton. So he wrote an article for Disability Studies Quarterly in 1997 called Bringing Disability to the Center, Disability as an Indispensable Category of Historical Analysis. And in this article, he compares disability status to gender, race, and ethnicity, stating that disability is as much of a minority as gender, race, and ethnicity, and it is also just as subjective, just as people can decide that somebody is black, white, they can say on their own that I don't think a woman can do this or that a certain ethnicity isn't right for this. They do the same things with disability, but disability is not fully incumbent upon the person, but society is creating this. And so this begs the question, what society are we talking about? And most of disability history has focused on American history. And perhaps the greatest monograph in this lineage is Kim E. Nilsson's A Disability History of the United States, published in 2012. She broke from the confines of advocacy groups or specific communities, and she was able to incorporate disability into all of American history, showing that it has been a part of our existence since the pre-Columbian era and the indigenous peoples of the Americas. So she has really shown that disability is a relative, socially constructed term. Other disabilities, they're organized topically, but this really shows that the physically, mentally, and psychologically handicapped have been actively engaged in American life since its earliest beginnings. So lately, a lot of studies have started to really look at religion and disability, and they've started to look at specific denominations and disability. And this is partly because religion is such a vital part of society and culture, our social understanding of things and our expectations. So there have been studies such as Sharon Mara Leon's In Image of God, The Catholic Struggle with Eugenics, which was published in 2013, in which she talks about how the Catholic Church dealt with eugenics, which is this idea that you can breed out from the community disability. And this is going to be very important in my research because this is something that gets discussed in relation to polygamy and various other things within the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. In the church itself, disability studies have not really taken off much. There have been some. For instance, in 2008, Mary Jane Woodger wrote an article called Cheat the Asylum of a Victim, and later wrote a book in 2011 called Against the Odds, which talk about the life of George Albert Smith, who was a prophet of the church who suffered from crippling depression. And so this is really talking specifically about that disability for him and how he got through that. Meanwhile, in recent years, there have been a couple of other historians who have started to really focus on Latter-day Saints and disability. Anne Leahy, an American Sign Language interpreter, has written several articles that specifically advocate for deaf awareness and for awareness of physical disabilities. And then Blair D. Hodges, in a master's thesis published in 2013, specifically focused on intellectual disability in Latter-day Saint thought and history from 1830 to 1900. However, these are very much the exception rather than the rule of being able to discuss disability history in the church. So all this said, what really comes to the light is that there are large gaps in the research, and that is what this study seeks to fill. I thank you for listening, and I look forward to hearing your comments.